Good morning, children. Today we'll do a prose lesson. So you can take your books, Treasure Trove. The lesson is on page 69. It is Hearts and Hands. The lesson is by O. Henry. Something about the author is on the opposite page. William Sidney Porter was an American writer who wrote under the pen name of O. Henry. His short stories are well known for their ready wit, gentle humor, and surprising endings. The ending of the story is very surprising. His story, Hearts and Hands, describes the chance encounter on a train. They met accidentally, by chance they met, between two acquaintances, Miss Fairchild and Mr. Easton. They will meet each other in a train. The situation turns awkward, embarrassing, when Miss Fairchild notices that Mr. Easton is handcuffed to a grim-looking man, gloomy, looking very upset, not cheerful. The man intervenes to save Easton from embarrassment. That is this glum-faced man. He is referred to as a glum-faced man. The name also is not mentioned. He is supposed to be a marshal. Marshal is an officer. And prevents the girl from discovering the truth about him. It is only through the observations of their fellow passengers that the reader is made aware of the real nature of the relationship between the two men handcuffed to each other. Hearts and Hands by O. Henry. At Denver, there was an influx of passengers into the coaches. There was a crowd of people getting into the train when it stopped at Denver. And the train is eastbound, going to the east, the B&M Express. In one coach there sat a very pretty young woman, dressed in elegant taste. She was dressed very beautifully, very gracefully, and surrounded by all the luxurious comforts of an experienced traveler. She is rich, and when she travels in comfort. She travels in luxury. Among the newcomers were two young men. The people who got into the train at Denver were two young men, one of a handsome presence with a bold, frank countenance. One person is young, he is handsome, he looks very truthful, very confident and manner. The other, a ruffled, glum-faced person, gloomy, heavily built. He is stout and roughly dressed. He is not very smartly or cleanly dressed and roughly dressed. The two were handcuffed together. That is, these two passengers who entered the train at Denver were handcuffed. As they passed down the aisle is the middle of the tray, of the compartment. As they passed down the aisle of the coach, the only vacant seat offered was a reversed one facing the attractive young woman. That is, the only vacant seat was opposite to this attractive young lady. Here the linked couple means handcuffed, seated themselves. They sat on the seat opposite this young lady. The young woman's glance fell upon them with a distant, swift disinterest. She looked at them casually, very quickly. She did not recognize them. But afterwards, when she recognized them, the young woman's glance fell upon them with a distant, swift disinterest. Not interested in them because she didn't recognize them. Then with a lovely smile brightening her countenance. After she recognized one of them, her whole face was smiling. A beautiful smile spread on her face. And then with a lovely smile brightening her countenance. Countenance is face. A smile lighted up her face. And a tender pink tinging her round cheeks. A pink blush, light pink color appeared on her cheeks. She held out a little grey gloved hand. She was wearing gloves. She held out a hand because she recognized one of them. And the person she recognized is Mr. Easton. When she spoke, her voice full, sweet and deliberate. So she had a very sweet voice, a very strong voice, and a voice which was used to command, a voice which people would listen to. an authoritative voice, full, sweet, and deliberate, proclaimed that its owner was accustomed to speak and to be heard. Her voice itself was a very commanding voice, an authoritative voice. When people heard her, they would listen to her. Well, Mr. Easton, she's talking to the handsome young man. If you will make me speak first, I suppose I must. Don't you ever recognize old friends when you meet them in the West? Have you not recognized me? I have seen you before and I have recognized you. The younger man roused himself sharply at the sound of her voice. He also remembered her voice, and it was a kind of shock and fear, the feelings which he expressed, because he is handcuffed and he does not want her to see him in this condition. At the sound of her voice, seemed to struggle with a single and slight embarrassment, which he threw off instantly. He felt awkward, he felt embarrassed, he felt uneasy, and then quickly he put himself at ease, and then clasped her fingers with his left hand. Because his right hand is handcuffed to the other person, the glum-faced man, he held out his left hand to her. For a moment only he felt embarrassed, then he put away that embarrassment and he smiled at her. It's Miss Fairchild, he said. This is the name of the lady. He said with a smile, I'll ask you to excuse the other hand. I can't give you my right hand because it is engaged otherwise. It is handcuffed. So I can offer you only my left hand. He slightly raised his right hand, bound by the wrist by the shining bracelet, that is the handcuffs, to the left one of his companion. His right hand is handcuffed to the left hand of the marshal. The glad look on the girl's eyes slowly changed into bewildered horror. Then only she saw the handcuffs, and the happiness on her face changed to shock and fear when she saw the handcuffs. The glow faded from her cheeks. The happiness, the smile, left her cheeks, faded from her cheeks. Her lips parted in a vague, relaxing distress. She is worried. She is in shock and fear. Easton, with a little laugh, as if amused, was about to speak again when the other forestalled him. The other is the glum-faced man. Forestalled him means prevented. Easton was about to say something. Maybe he was about to say why he was handcuffed. But his companion, his friend, that is the glum-faced man, stopped him immediately and he spoke. He spoke before Easton spoke in order to prevent the girl from being further embarrassed. You'll excuse me for speaking, miss, but I see you're acquainted with the marshal here. He says the marshal is Easton. In reality, it is Mr. Easton is the convict. He is the lawbreaker. He is the convict. And the law enforcer is the glum-faced man. But in order to save embarrassment on the part of the girl, he claimed to be the convict and he claimed that Mr. Easton is the marshal. You'll excuse me for speaking, miss, but I see you are acquainted with the marshal here. That is Mr. Easton. I now understand that you know Mr. Easton and he is a marshal. If you'll ask him to speak a word for me when we get to the pen, he will do it. You must speak in favor of me because I am punished for some crime I did. And because you must use your influence to speak in my favor, it will make things easier for me there. Pen is the court. He is taking me to Leavenworth prison. That is, he is taking me to the prison. Maybe pen refers to the prison. It's 7 years for counterfeiting. Counterfeiting means false money, not real money. He has imitated money. He has made counterfeit money. And for that his punishment is 7 years in Leavenworth prison. Oh, said the girl with a deep breath and returning color. Now she understood the situation, or seemed to understand the situation, and the color came back to her face. The happiness came back to her face. So that is what you are doing out here, a marshal. She is very surprised that her friend Mr. Easton has attained this high position of a marshal. She did not expect him to rise to that position because she knows him. My dear Miss Fairchild, said Easton calmly, I had to do something. Money has a way of taking wings. Money disappears. We spend money. So I needed money, and that is why I took this job of a marshal. Money has a way of taking wings means disappearing unto itself. And you know, it takes money to keep step with our crowd in Washington. Washington, the elite crowd, the rich crowd. I need money to keep up with them, to live in style with them, to dress like them. I saw this opening in the West. I saw this opportunity of becoming a marshal in the West. And well, a marshalship isn't quite as high a position as that of an ambassador. A marshal is of a lower position than an ambassador. So he tries to explain himself. And he says, I did not acquire such a high position as an ambassador. I am only a marshal. Even that, the girl, the Fairchild, is very surprised at it, at his having this job, at Easton getting this job of a marshal. The ambassador, said the girl warmly, doesn't call anymore. He needn't ever have done so. Ambassador need not have visited her or called her. You ought to know that. And so now you are one of those dashing Western heroes, fashionable Western heroes. And you ride and shoot and go into all kinds of dangers. You face all kinds of dangers because you have acquired this high position of marshal, though it is not as high as the ambassador. That is different from the Washington life. You have been missed from the old crowd. So, people who knew you before have missed you. The girl's eyes, fascinated, went back, widening a little to rest upon the glittering handcuffs. She is not fully satisfied with this explanation. She is still a little puzzled at the handcuffs which Mr. Easton is having, being handcuffed to the other man. The girl's eyes, fascinated, went back, widening a little to rest upon the glittering handcuffs. She is surprised, she is anxious, and she is not fully satisfied with the explanation given by the marshal that Mr. Easton is the marshal and he is the convict. He is the prisoner. He is being taken to Leavenworth prison for counterfeiting. Don't you worry about them, miss. Don't worry about the handcuffs, said the other man. All marshals handcuff themselves to the prisoners to keep them from getting away. Mr. Easton knows his business. Mr. Easton is supposed to be the marshal, according to the marshal himself, and it is the usual custom of marshals to handcuff themselves to the prisoners so that they will not escape. That is the reason why they are handcuffed. Will we see you again soon in Washington? Asked the girl. I hope to see you in Washington soon. Not soon, I think, said Mr. Easton. My butterfly days are over, I fear. That is, Mr. Easton is used to spending a lot of time enjoying himself, entertaining himself, living in luxury. Now, according to this incident here, according to what he has said, he needs money. He needs money to provide himself to live in style. So, not soon, I think, said Easton. My butterfly days are over. I should take on some serious business now. I should do some work in order to acquire some money so that I will be able to live. I love the West, said the girl irrelevantly, not connected to what has been, to the conversation that is being made here. Her eyes were shining softly. She looked away out the car window. She began to speak truly and simply without the gloss of style and manner. Mama and I spent the summer in Denver. She went home a week ago because father was slightly ill. I could live and be happy in the West. I think the air here agrees with me. Money isn't everything, but people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. Now, evidently, Mr. Easton and Miss Fairchild are not just mere acquaintances. There is some romance about them. They are lovers, we can say, and that is why Miss Fairchild was embarrassed to see the handcuffs. Now we will stop there and we will continue in the next class.